Do you believe the dead people like it for us to be here? Huckleberry whispered. I wish I'd knowed. It's awful solemn, like, ain't it? I bet it is. There was a considerable pause while the boys canvassed this matter inwardly. Then Tom whispered, Say, Hucky, do you reckon Hoss Williams hears us talking? Of course he does. At least his spirit does. Tom, after a pause, I wish I said Mr. Williams, but I never meant any harm. Everybody calls him Hoss. A body can't be too particular how they talk about these your dead people, Tom. This was a damper and conversation died again. Presently, Tom seized his comrade's arm and said, Shh! What is it, Tom? And the two clung together with beating hearts. Shh! There 'tis again. Didn't you hear it? There now, you hear it? Lord, Tom, they're coming. They're coming, sure. What'll we do? I don't know. Think they'll see us? Oh, Tom, they can see in the dark. Same as Cash. I wish I hadn't come. Oh, don't be afeard. I don't believe they'll bother us. We ain't doing any harm. If we keep perfectly still, maybe they won't notice us at all. I'll try to, Tom, but Lord, I'm all a shiver. Listen! The boys bent their heads together and scarcely breathed. A muffled sound of voices floated up from the far end of the graveyard. Look, see there? Whispered Tom. What is it? It's devil fire. Oh, Tom, this is awful. Some vague figures approached through the gloom, swinging an old-fashioned tin lantern that freckled the ground with innumerable little spangles of light. Presently, Huckleberry whispered with a shudder, It's the devil, sure enough. 3 of them, Lordy Tom. We're goners. Can you pray? I'll try, but don't you be afeard. They ain't gonna hurt us. Now, I lay me down to sleep. Shh! What is it, Huck? They're humans. One of them is anyways. One of them's old Muff Potter's voice. No, 'tain't so. Is it? I bet I know it. Don't you stir nor budge. He ain't sharp enough to notice us. Drunk, the same as usual, likely. Blame old Rip. All right, I'll keep still. Now they're stuck. Can't find it. Here they come again. Now they're hot. Cold again. Hot again. Red hot. They're hinted right this time. Say, Huck, I know another of them voices. It's Injun Joe. That's so, that murdering half-breed. I'd rather they were devils at a darn sight. What can they be up to? The whisper died wholly out now. The 3 men had reached the grave and stood within a few feet of the boys' hiding place. Here it is, said the third voice, and the owner of it held the lantern up and revealed the face of young Dr. Robinson. Potter and Injun Joe were carrying a hand barrow with a rope and a couple of shovels on it. They cast down their load and began to open the grave. The doctor put the lantern at the head of the grave and came and sat down with his back against one of them elm trees. He was so close the boys could have touched him. Hurry, men, she said in a low voice. The moon might come out at any moment. They growled a response and went on digging. For some time there was no noise but the grating sound of shovels discharging their fright of mold and gravel. It was very monotonous. Finally, a spade struck upon the coffin with a duly wooden accent, and within another minute or two, the men had hoisted it out of the ground, then pried off the lid with their shovels, got out the body, and dumped it rudely on the ground. The moon drifted from behind the clouds and exposed the pallid face. The barrow was got ready and the corpse placed on it, covered with a blanket, and bound to its place with the rope. Potter took out a large spring knife and cut off the dangling end of the rope, and then said, Now the cussed thing's ready, Sawbones, and you'll just out with another 5 or here she stays. That's the talk, said Injun Joe. Look here, what does this mean? Said Doctor. You required your pay in advance, and I've paid you. Yes, and you've done more than that, said Injun Joe, approaching the doctor who was now standing. 5 years ago, you drove me away from your father's kitchen one night when I come to ask for something to eat. And you said I wasn't there for any good. And when I swore I'd get even with you if it took 100 years, your father had me jailed for a vagrant. Did you think I'd forget? The Injun blood ain't in me for nothing. And now I've got you, and you've got to settle this. You know? He's threatening the doctor with his fist in his face. By this time, the doctor struck out suddenly and stretched the ruffian on the ground. Potter dropped his knife and exclaimed, Here now, don't you hit my pod! And the next moment he had grappled with the doctor, and the two were struggling with might and main, trampling the grass and tearing the ground with their heels. Injun Joe sprang to his feet, his eyes flaming with passion, snatched up Potter's knife, and went creeping cat-like and stooping, round and round about the combats, seeking an opportunity. All at once, the doctor flung himself free, seized the heavy headboard of William's grave, and felled Potter to earth with it. And in the same instant, the half-breed saw his chance and drove the knife to the hilt in the young man's breast. He reeled and fell partly upon Potter, flooding him with his blood, and in the same moment the clouds blotted out the dreadful spectacle, and the two frightened boys went speeding away in the dark. Presently, when the moon emerged again, Injun Joe was standing over the two fallen, contemplating them. The doctor murmured inwardly, gave a long gasp or two, and and was still. The half-breed muttered, That score settled, damn you." Then he robbed the body, after which he put the fatal knife in Potter's open right hand and sat down on the dismantled coffin. 3, 4, 5 minutes passed, and then Potter began to stir and moan. His hand collapsed upon the knife. He raised it, glanced at it, and let it fall with a shudder. Then he sat up, pushing the body from him as he gazed at it, and then around him confidently. His eyes met Joe's. "Lord, how is this show?" he said. "It's a dirty business," said Joe without moving. "What did you do that for?" I never done it." "Look here, that kind of talk won't wash." Potter trembled and grew white.